Welcome again to Sid Caudle. Sid, summer is going a little bit cooler in the United Kingdom, and maybe cool heads are what we're needing at the moment. Andy Bernard, is he hiding? Has he been hiding since he got the power that he's hunted down for years?
Well, no, I don't think it's fair to criticise him for going on holiday. I mean, at the end of the day, he worked very hard in the by-election. I mean, and that was a key battle for him, and he really put everything into it. And, from an organisational point of view, you've got to say it was a considerable achievement to win that constituency in the way he did, particularly bearing in mind that only in May, every single ward had been won by Reform. And initially, it looked as though it was almost unwinnable. And Keir Starmer was saying things like, "Oh, it's talking about the European Union and us needing to draw a closer relationship with the European Union," which many people took as a deliberate attempt to undermine Andy Burnham because that constituency had voted 67% to leave. So if the European Union became a major issue, then he was likely to lose. But in the end of the day, the constituency wanted to get rid of Keir Starmer, and they voted for Andy Burnham to get rid of Keir Starmer. But he worked very hard. And then obviously he had to make his plans coming into office, which he did. He got elected as leader of the Labour Party. He's become elected as Prime Minister. In my view, he deserves a break. And I've got no you know, reason whatsoever to criticize him for going on holiday at this point.
Well, maybe the real reason behind that is that we were so glad as a nation to get rid of Sir Keir, and it wasn't indicative of a true by-election. Let's see when others come out in the future before we decide. Sid, there's been a lot of criticism over the judiciary, and none more so than now. I'm thinking something happened a couple of weeks ago with Judge Gemma Lawson, which seems to be typical of where we are. It was a Gazan mother who was allowed to stay with her family, 18 of members of the family, indeed, and it caused furore at the time. But under our system of case law, if you wish, this has got tentacles everywhere, and it's going to open doors for anybody to stay in that's got a foothold in the country.
Yes, well, the problem is obviously that the job of the judiciary in this country is simply to interpret acts of parliament. You see, in America, it's very different because in America, they've got a constitution. So the job of the judiciary in America is to uphold the constitution. And on that basis, they can say that an executive order that's been made by the president is illegal, or they can say that an act being passed by both houses of Congress is illegal, even though it is apparently the will of the people, because on the grounds that it subverts the constitution. Now we've got nothing like that in this country. So in this country, all the judiciary can do is to uphold the laws passed by Parliament and apply them. Now, obviously, they can interpret the laws in different ways. I mean, Lord Denning, who was a wonderful judge, Christian judge, by the way, he used to interpret the laws with the intention of Parliament. So he would literally say, well, even though the law may say A, B, C, and somebody who was a judge might, pick up the words and apply the words, he said, Lord Denning would say, and that's not the intention of Parliament. The intention of Parliament was to whatever, and would apply that. And on that basis, he may often made decisions that were very different from the decisions that judges made, simply applying literally the words that were before them. But so the judges do have some flexibility, but in general, if judges make bad decisions then Parliament can always pass a new law. And when they pass a new law, the judges then have to apply that new law. So in this country, the judges don't have the ultimate say. That's the reality of it. But we know full well that this Labour government has got no intention of doing anything serious about stopping the boats or controlling immigration. They're just playing games. And that's the reality of it.
Yes, indeed. London, England, Sadiq Khan, every 54 minutes, there's a rape with a capital in Europe of shoplifting, record highs. Take that with the restrictions on traffic, everything else. They're about to pedestrianise, I understand, Oxford Street. He's been in a long time, 10 years. If he stands again, he looks like getting the job. Another thing to put in the pot here is he's a big mate of Andy Burnham. They think each other's wonderful. Not a good prospect, is it?
Well, personally, I've got no confidence whatsoever in the veracity of the London elections because it's the only elections in this country where we use Smartmatic um, software and the machines, the Dominion machines, which they were using in America, which are corrupt. In every election in this country, we have paper ballots, which are then counted, usually on the night. So it's the only election where we don't, where we use machines to count to count the ballots. And the result of that is the system is very open to corruption. And Muslims, and Sadiq Khan is undoubtedly one of them, and do not believe in democracy. I mean, there's no democracy in most of the Muslim world. In fact, it's often said that the only democracy in the Middle East is Israel, because they don't have elections in Muslim countries. There's no elections, well, other than sham elections. So they've got no problem whatsoever in rigging an election. It's not contrary to the Islamic faith to rig an election. In fact, quite the opposite. It's a good thing to lie to disbelievers to gain an advantage. So, from an Islamic point of view, it's a good thing to rig an election. Now, that's why I say I've got no confidence whatsoever that Sadiq Khan is ever going to be voted out of being mayor of London because I think he can just control the election.
Well, Sid, why hasn't this been got hold of? I mean, I've heard from not only your good self, but other sources saying about the veracity of the previous elections. Why haven't the major newspapers have a go? The Daily Mail is ripe for this one.
Well, I'm afraid that Ofcom would go bananas. I mean, you see, unfortunately, they've got nowhere near understanding or getting to grips with what I've just told you. So, as far as the authorities are concerned, everything is perfectly free and fair. There's no evidence of rigging whatsoever. And it's a bit like it happened in America over 2020. We know full well that election was rigged, but all the major media, including the BBC, were saying there's no evidence whatsoever of any rigging. We're not, but what they really meant is we're not willing to look at any evidence. We're not willing to examine any evidence because we consider that any suggestion that the election was rigged is beyond the pale. It's not something we're willing to consider. That's the truth. And the same applies to Sadiq Khan and London elections. The Ofcom, the powers that be, are not willing to enter into any suggestion or any possibility that the elections could possibly be rigged. They're not willing to, and as far as they're concerned, if any news organisation does engage in that possibility, then they would be severely sanctioned for making the suggestion.
Thinking about Ofcom, thinking about GB News, won lots of awards, the most watched news channel, both radio and television. 5 years, had a big celebration yesterday. So congratulations. But it's a miracle with Ofcom in mind, Sid, that they've survived, isn't it?
Um, yes, I mean, but you see, the thing is, there was a massive hole in the news media, which they have filled. Because it's very clear, you see, that in this country we had nothing like Fox News or Newsmax, which they've got in America. So all our news, BBC, Sky News, ITN, they're all following an agenda, which is basically a strong left-wing agenda. And there was a massive hole, an enormous hole in our news media. And that is the hole that GB News have filled. So even though the powers that be, as I say, Ofcom, hate GB News, they can't deny the wishes of the majority of the population, or at least 40% of the population that are very keen to have something like GB News and to watch something like GB News. And of course, the other result of it is that even though the major advertisers have boycotted GB News, there's still a large number of minority advertisers who are very keen to use them and are finding that when they use them, it works because there's so many people watching GB News and they're not allowed to charge or not able to charge the sort of advertising fees that ITN and Sky News are able to charge, but they're still able to do a tremendous service for the people that do use them. And that advertising revenue over time will only increase. So, yes, GB News have faced massive obstacles, but because they're filling a great need, that need is being met and they are being successful.
More strength to their arm. I mean, you get bizarre occurrences like this last week with Yvette Cooper, with an announcement from her department. They do the rounds to all the media. She said, "No, I'm not coming on GB News." That is awful. Everybody else had a piece of the action from her. GB News wasn't allowed to.
Well, in the end of the day, that's Yvette Cooper's right. If she doesn't want to come on a particular news channel, she can say, "I don't want to." I mean, to be quite honest with you, I wouldn't be interviewed by the Guardian or the Independent, or these newspapers are so um, malicious towards Christians. I know full well that. I mean, I did at one point have somebody from the Guardian wanting to contact me and wanting to interview me. And I said, I'm not going to be interviewed by them because the only thing they want to do is to try and mock me or pull holes in me or embarrass me. They're not interested in actually promoting any of my ideas. So why should I be interviewed by them? It's only going to be harmful to me. So she's got a right not to be interviewed. But the thing is, it reflects badly on her that she's not able to debate with people she disagrees with. I mean, the actual term is bigot, and they're only too pleased to call Christians bigots. But a bigot is someone who is intolerant of those that they disagree with. And obviously, if a minister of the government is unable to talk with GB News and debate with GB News, then basically she's a bigot. She's intolerant of those she disagrees with.
Yes. The other thing that's come out of this, of course, is Cobra Park, and not the only location that GB News has not been allowed to go in by a local council. That is not democracy, to be polite about the thing. But what gets into these, and a lot of them, I've got to say, I'm not going to be popular, Sid, are amateur politicians on local councils. They shouldn't be allowed to get away with that.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely, totally agree with you. And that's where there should be a facility in court for GB News to take the council to court. And it should be illegal, frankly, for a council to be able to turn around to a news media and to say, we're not allowing you into our premises. That literally should not be something that should be allowed to happen ever.
Well, we all know about Angela Rayner. There she is in charge of home building. Has the plan been scuppered from day one? 1.5 million homes is the dream plan, wasn't it? And it's collapsed. and it will never get anywhere near there. And it's simple. And why didn't they realize it before? The fact is that it takes longer to build a house in the United Kingdom than practically anywhere else in the world. Again, mainly it's delays, planning, minute laws that seem to stop everything happening at a local and at national level. We're in a bureaucratic mess. Now, you could say that about Spain, I suppose. No more bureaucracy than here. But I tell you what, they get round it, and houses are built in traditional time are even less. What is it about our civil servants at every level that makes us so incompetent?
Yeah, but there's two things here. One is that in the 1960s we were absolutely obsessed with building more houses because it was all based then on slum clearance. So we had to get rid of the slums, which didn't have bathrooms and so on and so forth, and build new houses. And government was focused on numbers of new houses. And the Prime Minister was boasting of the millions of new houses that he'd managed to build. The problem is that what they were building was high-rise blocks of flats, which actually themselves, in a matter of only about 20 years, became slums and had to be demolished. So there's a great danger in just simply focusing on numbers. We've also got to look at quality. And by and large, the houses that we're building now are much, much higher quality than what we were building in the 1960s. And I would be concerned, frankly, if the government was saying, yeah, we've managed to reach our targets, we built the 1.5 million new homes that we promised, but the actual quality of what they were building was so bad that you'd have to say, how long are these houses going to last? I mean, it's mad. Much better to build high quality houses that are going to last for hopefully 100 years or more, and provide the needs. And by the way, I've got no problem whatsoever with high-rise flats being built in the right location, close to railway stations, provided that they are the right quality with receptions and so on and so forth. I mean, I've seen some beautiful high-rise flats, for instance, around Canning Town Station, which they've just built, which have got receptions, have got concierges, and they've also got gyms, they've got swimming pools, and the flats are of a very high quality, beautiful flats. And by and large, people these days, particularly young people, aren't particularly interested in gardens. I mean, for a long time, it's like the garden was almost like essential and a very important part of the house. These days, people are far more interested in the house than they are in the garden, and a lot of people have got no problem whatsoever buying high quality flats. So I've got no problem in high rise flats being built, that are of the right quality. So yeah, so it's very important that we think about the quality of what we're building, not just the quantity. Um, but the other thing which we need to address is the question of why we need lots of new houses. Now, one of the reasons is because of the uh, immigration that's just completely got out of control. And it's not only small boats, it's other immigration as well. And it did completely get out of control. And I found when I was door knocking in London, and particularly in the Tottenham area, and you're door knocking in an area which is terraced housing. And you would expect to find in terraced housing first time buyers that are getting on the housing ladder, that are buying their first home. But instead of first time buyers in the houses, you find almost exclusively immigrants. So what's happened? What's gone on is that the councils have bought up the houses and then put immigrants in them. That's what's happened. So because the councils have bought up the house and put immigrants in them, they're no longer available for first-time buyers. So it's very, very hard for first-time buyers to get on the housing ladder. And one of the results of that is that by and large, people are only buying their first home now in their 30s, whereas 30 or 40 years ago, people were buying their first home in their early 20s. So that means there's a greater burden on the rented housing sector as well. So, you know, controlling immigration is also behind the housing problem.
Yeah, the Tories appear to have got hold of a hot one here. Maybe Kemi has not had a particularly good fortnight, a bit of scandal there. But now she's hit back and said 200 and odd thousand houses will be acquired and the immigrants sent back. One peculiar thing she said, Sid, it doesn't apply to EU immigrants. Why?
Because they passed a separate law, basically that said that anyone who is here legally under the EU freedom of movement in when we left the EU in 2020 has a right to stay here. Um, so that law having been passed, basically she's literally saying, I'm not overturning that. If EU people have got a right to be here, that's fine. But if people have come here illegally, from outside the EU, then that's a different matter.
Okay, we time has gone again. We've got two items we must get in. First of all, the shenanigans that's going on over here in Ceuta, which is um, a little piece of land together with Melilla. There's two enclaves there in North Africa, stone's throw from where we are here. And it appears that they're going to have another go to get in. Now, this present regime in Spain, and I've got to be careful here, keep my head down somewhat, um, but I've got to speak the truth. It's as near as communist as you can get. You think Britain's bad? No, it isn't compared with Spain. They're extreme left-wing government. They've legalized, they said, 500,000 people to regularize them. They've been in the country for 5 months, therefore, we must make them officially legal. Now, it has to be stated that if you analyze this, most of them have come from South America. There's always been a strong tie, apart from the language, of course, between Spain and South America. And a lot of the people from there are good people and would be welcomed into many of European society, especially if they got the language as well. An awful lot, though, are coming from Morocco and always has. And that's more of a mixed problem. And of course, then you get the chances, and that's the right word, coming from sub-Sahara, etc. Now, they've said 500,000. They knew that was false, but that's typical of a gaslighting government. We've got them everywhere. And it was 1.2 million, and in fact, it's going to be more than that. There is now great pressure on the European Union for Spain to reverse its laws and actually say you can't just legalize that. They can come under Schengen to everywhere in Europe. And Meloni in Italy has actually closed the borders, only for a month, but it's a good statement that she's made. She's helped and proved that you can stop immigrants. We can't in Britain. Therefore, as you said a little while ago, Sid, there's no intention of stopping them, just like Spain.
Yes, absolutely. Well, it's socialists have got this idea that all the immigrants coming over are poor people that are desperate and they're fleeing something and they need help, and we should hold out a welcoming hand to all these desperate people and say that they're welcome in our country. And that is absolutely the policy of the Green Party in the UK. I mean, they're literally even willing to publicly fight councils that are resistant to immigrants, and they're willing to just to take to food and whatever to hotels and so to help these poor people. Now, if that were true, if it were true that these were all poor people that were in desperate need and we should help them, then fair enough. But it's not true. these aren't poor people. The truth is that this is a Muslim hijra um, being engaged in deliberately to make the West more Islamic. And these people are on a journey. That's what Mamdani said. Mamdani actually said these people are on a journey, and they're on a journey to make the West more Islamic. So they're not fleeing anything. And as I've said before, we saw that very clearly with Kabatu, which was after he was arrested and sentenced for having sex with a 12-year-old girl, said, I had no idea that it was illegal in Britain to have sex with a 12-year-old girl. I want to go back to Ethiopia. So obviously he wasn't fleeing anything, wasn't he? And interestingly, a large number of these immigrants are coming from Ethiopia and Eritrea, and you know, it's not, these countries aren't dangerous for Muslims to live in. There's very few countries in the world that are dangerous for Muslims to live in. And if they are, I mean, there may be one or two like China, but there's masses of Muslim countries that are willing to open their hands to those people, and none of these people need to come over to the UK. None of them need to go to Spain. So they've got to wake up. The Spanish government's got to wake up and realize why the people are coming over, and and then decide, do they want their country to be made more Islamic or not?
Okay, we got to finish with a bit of footy. Of course, it's Infantino and big mates with Trump, and he's got some Trump-like powers, and he's come out with an apology, Sid. My goodness me, we've come across qualified apologies under politics every 5 minutes. He's doing the same. Oh, so sorry. But would you go ahead and perhaps do it again? Not answering that question. So therefore, UEFA's come along and the FA and other organisations say, unless you can categorically say you won't try this lot again of privatising everything within the world of FIFA and the World Cup, then we're not interested. We want you to go. Will they get rid of him, Sid?
Honestly, I don't know. Well, as far as I know, he's just been re-elected by 83 votes to 13, I believe. So, he's got another term. I don't like what Infantino has done because I think there should be way more consultation before he made such an announcement. I think, like you say, he's trying to take too much power for himself. And as far as the relationship with Trump is concerned, the only thing that I've got concerns about is the way that Trump persuaded Infantino that a player who was sent off, who was therefore disqualified from playing in the next match, suddenly that disqualification was suspended so that he could play in a round of 16 match for the US. Sorry, that is completely unacceptable. No other country was given such a suspension of a disqualification. And it's just like that to me shows that he hasn't got proper moral courage to make correct decisions. He should never have made that decision. And that to me is the only place where I can see that his relationship with Trump goes too far. But he needed a good relationship with Trump when they had a World Cup in the United States. It was right that he had a good relationship with the host president, and it was right that the host president took a full part in what was happening. But but yeah, the only issue for me about this privatization was that there was no extent. There should have been extensive discussions and proper consultation before they went anywhere further with it.
We'll go out in a bombshell, Sid. That being, it is come from some sources, which are usually correct, that actually before this fiasco, Trump was suggesting that Infantino should become head of the UN. Well, shall I say that again, or do I not believe it?
Well, obviously, the leadership of the UN currently is completely awful, and they were proposing this woman Bachelet to be the new General Secretary of the UN, and she was just terrible, absolutely terrible. I mean, pro-Hamas. So yeah, I mean, obviously Trump is looking for somebody on the international scale who could do that job. And Infantino could certainly do it a lot better than the current leadership, I can tell you that.
There you are. Bombshell after bombshell. Thank you, Sid. We'll
Okay,
see you very shortly.
cheers.